Okay, welcome everyone. It's another episode of The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the news division of United Network. And our mission is to bring you the real news. So what's really happening on this planet and even outside of this planet. In other realms, if you've been listening to the GIA reports recently, we've been talking a lot about other realms and how that is impacting our planet right now. And all of this is so important. I guarantee the stuff that you hear with us, you're not going to hear anywhere else. Our network releases a ton of content throughout the week that includes in-depth news coverage, including local stories told through the eyes of our field messengers. We also talk about the restoration of our planet and how we're creating the new Earth. And we've got some in-depth news coverage of stories that we think you just need to be more informed about, because a lot of this information, while it might be online in some places, very few people gather this information and present it in a format that makes sense, right? So we try to create those types of stories for you. And we also have reports from the Global Intelligence Agency about, like I said, what's happening everywhere in this multiverse. And we really believe that this is, one of these final battles of good versus evil. So you being on this planet now is pretty amazing. And we're so glad that you were able to find us and to, learn more about what's really going on. If you want more information on who we are and how we have this information, because we always encourage you guys to do your due diligence and to do your own research, go to our website, unitednetwork.earth, and you can learn more about us. What this podcast is this is a week in review show. So I bring up most of the stories that we've covered over the last week and kind of give you some highlights from that. So it's a great way to catch up because I know you guys are really busy, especially right now during the holidays. You may have missed some stuff. This is also a great way to share UNN with other people. So what happens with us is we are an independent news group and we put out this content. And we have to make money with that in some way because we have people all over the world that work on these stories and help to get the content to you guys. And so we have to pay them, and we have a lot of volunteers as well. And so we have a membership program. When our content first comes out, it is released through our app. And some stuff is put online through our website, but not the complete stories. So if you're a member, you get access to all of that with, the moment that we release it. If you're not a member, that's okay. We still release our content about a week later. We put it on YouTube and Rumble. We're not, we don't control those sites, obviously. We would run things a lot differently. So we can't promise that the content's going to stay up there, but that's another great way you can subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble channels and access all of our content about a week later. With all of the content we put out there, I'm always telling you guys, think critically. Don't just believe something because I say it, because Kim says it. This really has to resonate with you. And I'll tell you, to be very honest, some of this stuff that we talk about, it can take you aback. You might have to just kind of meditate on it a little bit, or maybe it's just not going to make sense right now and you come back to it later. When I first came across a lot of Kim's content, I couldn't put all the pieces together. There was some stuff to me that resonated, all of her talk about the financial system made a lot of sense to me. And I was like, wow, this woman really knows what she's talking about. There was, other things she would talk about ETs, and I just wasn't ready for that. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? That's an American expression, She has really good content. She's putting out really good information. For me, I wasn't ready to hear all of it at once. But that doesn't mean she wasn't telling the truth. So I would encourage you guys, as you start to hear stuff, if there's stuff that doesn't make sense, if there's stuff that just doesn't resonate with you or completely goes against your way of life or your religion or whatever it is, then don't freak out. Take the stuff that works for you, leave the rest for now. Because it's very possible that later on something is going to happen in your life and you're going to think back and you'll be like, oh, like that one time when I went outside because I didn't believe in ETs, and I went outside and suddenly all these objects are moving around in the sky. For me, that had nothing to do with Kim. That was me. And I had to go through a process. I had to see stuff. I had to experience stuff. And then that opened the door for me to learn more. So I just wanted to share that story because not everyone is on the same path, is on the same journey. And that is beautiful. All right, because we're all going to come to different conclusions at different times and just makes the world a more interesting place. So think critically, ask questions, do some research. Like I said, a lot of this information is online. It's just not really put together for you. Having said that, the information specifically from the GIA reports, you are not going to find online. No one is going to give you that information. So instead of me just kind of dancing all around it, let's just get to the content. As far as announcements go, we had no news or GIA report on Wednesday. We also didn't have a GIA report on Monday because Kim's been very busy. So that was Christmas Day. So the information that we're going to talk about today, if you feel like we're missing some stories, we kind of are because we didn't release the news on Wednesday. The other heads up that I want to give you is that we are also not going to have a news update for you this Wednesday. It is January 1st, and we're trying to give a lot of the people that work on the news a little bit of a break. So we are not going to have news this coming Wednesday. So next week when I do the rundown, I'm also going to say, hey, it's probably going to be a short episode today. Still a lot of really good information, but we'll probably get through this a little bit more quickly than normal. So let's just hop to it. Here is the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, let's talk about our incredible field messengers and the reports that went out this week. Because UNN is not about me. UNN is not about Kim. UNN is not about Calen. All right, we are deliverers of the information. We call ourselves messengers, but it's really about you guys. And we do foresee a time in the near future where the news is pretty much all field messenger reports and perhaps, some people from our team going out and talking to you guys or whatever, but it's really about you and what you're doing in the world. The spotlight really isn't on us. We're just gathering the information for you. And that's what our field messengers are all about. It's just people wanting to share what's going on in their world, in their communities, because, We've been separated for a very long time, and we've been told lies about each other. And so this is a way for us to gather together and to relearn what it means to be human on this planet, because we're all a little bit different, which is beautiful. And, where we live is different. The things we do are different, and it should be embraced. Who wants people that just all look the same, act the same? That sounds like a robot. We're not robots. I know the deep state wants to turn us into cyborg robots, but it's not happening, okay? So let's talk about our beautiful field messenger reports from this week. Amy from New Jersey, she shows this video of some crazy drones that are over in her area. Like I said, in New Jersey, she says there were up to 8 drones, I believe she said. They're unidentified 6-foot drones. They've been spotted across New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. It's obviously sparking some concern amongst the locals, right? It's like, what in the world is this? And obviously the government isn't very much help. Now, if you did not hear our report, our GIA report that Kim did explaining what was going on with the drones, I'm not sure, was that last week? Might have been last week. Definitely go back and listen, because there's a very specific reason why we saw those drones. By the time field messengers get us their report, sometimes it's a week later or even more. So I don't think this was something that just happened. We said in our report for the GIA report that you probably weren't going to see much more of these drones because what was attracting them was taken away. That's all I'm going to say, because we went into this whole spiel about it. So again, go back into, I believe it was last week's rundown, and you'll hear some more information about the drones and what was really going on there. Still, Amy did a great job of showing us, again, what's going on in her community. Look up. There's some drones. It was concerning residents in the area. She said that despite what the government says, the federal government about oh, we know those drones are there. It's all good. No one's doing anything illegal. Well, according to Amy, you're not allowed to fly drones in her area. So obviously someone was doing something they shouldn't have been doing. And again, there's a whole story behind it. So go ahead and check out that report. But she says they've been there for over a month. She said flying over this golf course. So if you want to see some more drone footage, check out Amy's report. Emma from Spain. So that the drone footage, we got that going on. But most of the other stories I'm going to talk about are all holiday related because we've got multiple holidays, multiple religions celebrating right now. So let's go through some of the holiday reports that we had this week. Emma out of Spain. She shows us what it's like to celebrate Christmas with a more tropical vibe because it's warmer there. They've got beaches, but they don't miss out on the festive cheer. So she was showing us all of the holiday preparations in Fuerteventura, Spain. They call Santa Claus over there Papa Noel, which you may have heard of before. They were lining some of the public areas with poinsettias. That was a popular thing. And yeah, they kind of celebrate Christmas, just like you would in a colder climate. I grew up in the Midwest in the United States, and it was hit or miss whether or not we had snow each year, but it was always cold, I guess. And then I moved out, I had a few stops in between. And then I moved out to San Diego, California, and I was like, oh, this is totally different. So I know exactly what Emma's talking about. Even when you have beautiful sunshine and it's 80, 90 degrees, we still celebrate Christmas pretty much like everybody else. All right, Maya out of Italy. She takes us to the Limatola Castle near Naples in Italy because they were hosting a vibrant Christmas market. So beautiful. Can you imagine a Christmas market in a castle? I mean, that takes things up a whole other notch, doesn't it? It enchanted visitors with traditional local cuisine, handmade Christmas ornaments, and she just went around and showed us all the different stalls. She says it's like being transported in time, which I totally get. So many beautiful lights. It's basically a fortress that's turned into a mansion, and in this case, a mansion that's decorated for Christmas. Beautiful. Nikki out of Hungary takes us to her local Christmas fair, another holiday market, this time in Hungary. And she helped organize this. She says the goal was to create a beautiful afternoon for families where they can meet local artisans. They can actually see how they make their local products, which is very cool. She ended her story with some live Christmas music. I guess one of the local music teachers brought his students out. And it was really nice, to kind of hear some of their Christmas carols that they sing over there and just to appreciate the community and them getting together for the holidays. Kim out of Oregon takes us to the Festival of Trees in Brownsville, Oregon. It's a local event where businesses decorate Christmas trees. They put them in their shops, and then those trees can be sold, and it raises money for the local community. So we got to see some beautiful Christmas trees decorated in various ways, sometimes with the theme of whatever the business was. And it's, just a great way for people to give back to their community. Rick out of Arizona. So Rick is Santa Claus. He plays Santa Claus for people in his area in Arizona. And I believe he did this story a while back, but it's always fun to see Rick in a Santa suit. So he dresses as Santa, and I believe his wife dresses as Mrs. Claus. And they go out, and this particular video, I believe they were at a senior center. So we got to see some of the residents there, and it's a beautiful thing, right? It's almost like these older folk, it's like a trip back in time a little bit for them to see the joy on their face. There was also a man who I believe was just about to pass away. So I can only imagine the feelings that Rick and his wife had, knowing that this person was going to pass on. And, we know that's not the end, but it's the end of this, life cycle here on Earth. And so, I am sure a lot of emotion there, but it was beautiful to see all the joy that Rick and his wife, brought to these people. And I believe they do it every year. So big kudos to anyone out there who is volunteering, giving their time around the holidays, helping people in various ways. We don't always see what you do, but we know that you exist. And I shudder to think what our world would be like without people like you. So thank you so much. Okay, so let's talk about some of the news stories, the more in-depth stories that the team and I worked on this week. We talked about what's in your deodorant. Have you gone down that rabbit hole before? It's one of those ones that you're probably going to walk away going, what in the world am I putting on my skin? Oh my gosh. So we know deodorant is a daily staple. But what's actually in this stuff? Common ingredients like aluminum, parabens, triclosan, and synthetic fragrances have hidden risks. Aluminum blocks your sweat when you sweat, but research suggests it might accumulate in the body and contribute to health issues. Parabens act as preservatives but can disrupt your hormones. These are some big words in this story, you guys. While triclosan, an antimicrobial agent, has been linked to antibiotic resistance and thyroid problems. Synthetic fragrances, which these are the ones, some of the stuff smells really good. I get it, right? But they have phthalates in them that are often undisclosed. These produce chemical cocktails that can cause allergies, hormone disruption, and more. So what do? Well, natural deodorants offer a safer alternative with simple, eco-friendly ingredients, though they may require an adjustment period. Your body may have to adjust to this. Ultimately, being mindful of what you apply to your skin, especially in sensitive areas, can make a big difference for your health. Let's talk about prison conditions, which I know we've touched on in the past. We've done some New Earth stories about innovative ways people are looking at prisons and trying to make it more focused on rehabilitation. And that's kind of what this story focuses on. The reason we're talking about it now is there have been some reports of people lighting themselves on fire in U.S. prisons. There was one in particular because of the poor conditions. So why do we have these poor conditions, and why do we have this whole system set up the way that it is, right? There is a lack of mental health care. There's an overuse of solitary confinement, which really exacerbates inmate struggles. And the U.S. prison system spends billions of dollars annually. It often benefits private companies that profit from cost-cutting and exploitation.
While the current structure upends the lives within its walls, the criminal legal system affects people on the outside too. Nearly half of all adults living in the U.S. have had an immediate family member incarcerated for at least one night. That's approximately 113 million people. 1 in 4 has had a sibling incarcerated, 1 in 5 has had a parent incarcerated, and 1 in 34 people has had an immediate family member spend 10 or more years in prison. Clearly, mass incarceration is far-reaching in its impact. But is locking up millions of people keeping the country safe? The simple answer is no. There's ample evidence that higher rates of incarceration don't lead to lower rates of crime. This includes violent crime, which is often called upon as a justification for locking people up. Instead, reduction in crime has been explained by factors such as increased employment, higher wages, and improved graduation rates. In other words, investments in people, not jails and prisons, leads to a decrease in crime. Despite this evidence, the United States spends roughly $81 billion each year on mass incarceration, while programs investing in housing, healthcare, education, addiction treatment, mental health, and other initiatives proven to make people safer are vastly underfunded. The data is clear. Mass incarceration doesn't keep people safe, but public safety models that actually invest in the public do.
Globally, approaches will vary from prison to prison, with countries like Russia, China, and Thailand emphasizing punishment, while Nordic countries prioritize rehabilitation and dignity, achieving better outcomes. By investing in education, mental health support, and job training, we can create a justice system that values second chances and fosters safer communities. So I think we all know the system is broken. Our prisoners are telling us it's broken. We know it's broken. We know this benefits the elite, and it needs to change. Let's talk about internet access. So we know the internet has transformed modern life, offering endless opportunities for connection, education, and growth, but millions still face barriers to access. While 95% of people live in areas with internet coverage, only 67% use it due to high costs. I didn't know that. That's really surprising to me. They also don't have enough devices, and they are limited when it comes to digital literacy. Rural and low-income regions face the largest gaps as infrastructure is expensive and often neglected. For those online, censorship restricts access to information and tools. We've seen whole countries doing this, right? That creates unequal opportunities. Bridging the digital divide and fighting censorship is essential to empower individuals, foster social equity, and unlock the full potential of the internet for everyone, not just everyone that can pay large bills, right? All right, let's talk about hair dye. This was a story that I personally worked on this week. For those of you who may not know, I do dye my hair, and I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. I would love it if I naturally had red hair. I do not. So I've been thinking about this a lot. What you put on your head, kind of like what we were talking about with the deodorant story, or anything that you put on your skin. Your skin is a living organ, right? So we have to be very careful of this. And I also think about, well, if you're going to put hair dye on your head, that's your crown chakra, right? You should really know what's going into these ingredients. My husband has been telling me lately, he's like, oh, you're all into what you eat and what you put on your skin, and then you put this nasty stuff on your hair. And I was like, that's a really good point. It's one of the reasons I wanted to take this story this week. So we know that hair dye can offer a world of possibilities for changing your look, for the day, for the month, whatever. We women, we're all over the place, right? But it is important to understand the risks and all of those chemicals, like I said. Temporary dyes, so we talked a little bit about temporary dyes. They are more gentle. Permanent dyes often have things like ammonia in them, hydrogen peroxide, and a lot of other nasty stuff, which can cause dryness, allergic reactions, or even long-term health concerns like cancer.
If you're someone who dyes your hair, you're going to want to listen to this. A comprehensive study in 2019 was completed with over 50,000 different women in America to look at the possible correlation between breast cancer and dyeing your hair. These women were followed for over 8 years, and they were broken down even by ethnicity and different products used based on your ethnicity. What they found? Well, that white women who dyed their hair at least once a year had a 7% higher risk of a breast cancer diagnosis. For African American women, it was an increased 45% chance of breast cancer diagnosis.
That's scary, right? Regulatory standards for hair dyes vary globally, with stricter rules in the EU than in the US. For a safer, eco-friendly alternative, plant-based options like henna and botanical dyes nourish your hair without harsh chemicals, but may require more upkeep. Ultimately, the choice between natural and traditional hair dyes comes down to your own priorities, your hair health, and lifestyle. And I will say, I'm even impacted by some of the stories that we do, you guys, not just you, but I practice what I preach, because I was looking at this stuff and I was like, I got to change this up. So I just ordered a plant-based, I think it's henna, hair dye. And I don't know, maybe I'll update you guys and let you know how it goes. I think it's supposed to arrive tomorrow. So we're all learning here. This is learning for all of us. All right, let's talk about floating islands. This is a really cool, this is almost a new Earth story, but sometimes I feel like the news stories that we do become all, I mean, they're important, they're informative, but sometimes it's a little gloom and doom, right? Like, they're killing us. So this is a really good story just to talk about the good that people are doing. If you haven't heard of floating islands before, you can Google that, or whatever search engine you want to use. But let's talk about it a little bit. This is something you should actually watch, but I'm just going to tell you about it now. Pollution from urban development, farming, and contaminants has left many lakes and rivers unfit for wildlife or swimming, but there are natural solutions like floating islands that offer hope. These man-made platforms, so just visualize this, okay? Man-made platforms host aquatic plants whose roots and biofilm break down pollutants, improving water quality without chemicals. They're used globally. These floating islands reduce algae, they support biodiversity, and even integrate innovations like solar panels and farms. So I'm going to play a soundbite from someone talking about this. You really do need to watch the story, but just kind of imagine this in your mind. Here we go.
Challenge here we're trying to solve is to bring life back into the river and regenerate it and provide some regenerative habitat that has a knock-on effect across the whole waterway. Over time, what can happen is these systems, these waterways, become very engineered and man-made, and they lack the natural cover that you get with green vegetation. And when you introduce this aquatic habitat, it begins to provide the starting point for other life to come back into that river again.
I love it. By embracing these eco-friendly solutions, we can restore our waterways and protect the environment. And our final story, I was surprised by this. One of our writers, Camellia, she came up with this story, and I found it so interesting. It's about women and how they are more prone to autoimmune diseases, which once you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. But check this out.
80% of autoimmune disease, which are diseases where the immune system attacks the body that it's supposed to protect, 80% of them happen to women.
Why?
I knew people before they got sick, and I knew them in their context of their families of origin. And these people had 4 significant characteristics. One is they tended to put other people's emotional needs ahead of their own. Number 2, they tended to identify with duty, role, and responsibility rather than the needs of the self. Number 3, they tended to be very nice, which means they repressed healthy anger. And number 4, these people tended to believe that they're responsible for other people feel. Why is it women? Because who in this culture is programmed to always looking after everybody else's emotional needs, taking everybody's stresses, identify with their duties and their role, not be angry in a healthy way, and to take responsibility for other people's feelings? It's women. It's not a gender issue. It's a cultural issue.
Makes a lot of sense, right? Well, simple remedies like fish oil, vitamin D, and anti-inflammatory foods such as turmeric and ginger can help ease these symptoms, alongside choosing non-toxic products like your deodorant, like your hair dye, like all this stuff we put on ourselves, right? Small, mindful changes in lifestyle and self-care can empower those living with autoimmune conditions and improve their well-being. Okay, let's take a look at some of the highlights from the single GIA report we had this week. So Kim has been very busy. Plus, we've had the holidays. It's been kind of a crazy time. A lot's going on our planet, as well as this location called the Netherworld. So if you've been following us, you've been learning more and more about the Netherworld. We've got more information on that, as well as the deep state and how they're trying to work with the Netherworld. And it's just been kind of crazy. And if you have felt off, if your person has felt off, if you have been hearing tones, if your body is just a little bit out of whack, well, we're going to explain why. All right. And this is a special report that Kimberly Gogan, she's the head of the GIA, the Global Intelligence Agency, she gives. It's usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This week, it was only Friday. But I've got 2 different sound bites for you. And it's just mind-blowing stuff. If you guys want to take notes, take notes. This would be great to look up stuff. In these sound bites, I'm not sure if I included all the locations, because sometimes Kim says, oh, we located things here and here and here. And those are good things to follow along with. You know, search for some of these things. It just makes the story seem more real, because it's hard to picture some of this stuff going on. It's like, we know this stuff is happening. We know the world is crazy, but it just makes things a little bit more real. So I encourage you guys to do that. All right. So not a lot of meetings are going on this week. I guess Kim was getting some questions about what are the deep state, what are they doing this week? Well, they're not really meeting too much. Apparently, they are chasing what the Netherworld folks are doing, which we're going to talk about in just a bit. These are beings that they wanted to come to this planet, wanted to essentially take over our planet, and it's not going so well for them. The other thing the deep state is doing right now is they are trying to get money. And Kim didn't go into a lot of information about this. She said that there were more pallets of cash they were trying to, cash in. They were trying to start up the Fed Now program. And they're also making claims like all money is going to go digital. That's not even possible. We've talked about that numerous times. But they're just saying the same things over and over again, right? It's the definition of insanity because this never works out in their favor. So we don't talk too much about what the deep state is doing because they're just doing the same thing over and over, and that's really boring. What Kim really focused on is what's going on with the Netherworld. She mentioned there are a couple of races. Now, when I say races, anything that comes out of the Netherworld is not an organic race. It's not like the human race or any of our other ET friends that are helping us right now. That's not what it is. This is all artificial, generated from AI. Think of a world that's just completely AI and all beings in it are AI, essentially, pretty much. So apparently there were a couple of quote unquote races. Kim called them K, and apparently there was a Q race. I don't know if that's like tied into the Q movement at all. I think the Q people thought it was, or like, oh, the Q race. These were not good beings, okay? Allegedly, they were going to, quote unquote, help humanity until they turned against us because the deep state was helping them. And then it got to a point where the deep state's like, oh crap, they're not helping us. Let's hope that Kim fixes it, which she did, but she didn't fix it for the dumb humans. She fixed it because we don't want crazy AI beings here on our planet. All right, so that's the good news. Like these weird races that wanted to come here and do bad things to humanity, that's been taken care of. That's not going to happen. But just to show you how far the deep state was willing to take it, Kim says many of them signed up to be walk-ins for these beings. So, hey, just take over my body. Just, do what you need to do. Like, I don't know how they thought this was going to end up in their favor, that somehow these beings were just going to be like, oh yeah, dumb humans, and here's your own financial system, and we're going to put you in charge of everything. What is going on in their head? Obviously not much, because none of this makes sense. Why they thought beings would leave them in charge or let them have any kind of control is mind-blowing to me. But Kim says it was almost kind of like they were getting a dose of their own medicine because the deep state, it's like these beings made a lot of promises to the deep state, kind of like how the deep state makes promises and never fulfills them. And they didn't follow through. So it's kind of like the deep state getting a dose of their own medicine, which I'm sure on some level is very fulfilling to watch. Okay. There have been attempts from non-humans, so probably this Q and K race, these beings that aren't really beings, right, that are part of the Netherworld. There have been attempts to cause us harm on Earth. So again, this may have impacted you, especially if you're sensitive. If you've been feeling off, okay, it's probably a result of this. And this has been ongoing for a while. Kim talks about how they would use like double digits, like 9-9, 10-10, 11-11, 12-12, things like this. This was an opportunity. These times were an opportunity for them to do more and to try to take over our planet. And this has a lot to do with Earth being the last keystone planet because we had other planets. I believe there were 3 initially. And the other 2 are gone. So we're left with Earth. That's why there's a spotlight on us right now. And these crazy, non-human, non-organic beings want to take over. Because if you're trying to take over the light, you probably would try to take over a keystone planet. Okay. So let's talk about something the SSP did. They weren't too involved at this, but they basically led us to something else that was kind of interesting. Doesn't sound like we're repeating ourselves over and over again, like what the deep state does. So the SSP used an old communication line from Marduk to reach out to a group of people that we weren't really aware that existed. And when I say people, they were actually humans. And Kim calls this the Nazi Hydra Program. These are what I would call mad scientists. They have been genetically modified. They are human, but they have been modified. So, for example, their brains, Instead, how we apparently only use like 10% or less of our brains. These scientists could use up to 60% of their brains. And they existed technically in the Netherworld, although there were portals where their creations could be sent to our planet. So if this doesn't already sound like some sort of episode of Doctor Who or something you saw on Star Trek, just wait. It gets more intense. And in case you're wondering, yes, this does tie into Project Paperclip. Here's Kim.
But some of the interesting things that the Secret Space Program, ETAL, I guess you would say, have been up to, a lot of it has to do with things that we are now finding. And one of those curious things are when the Secret Space Program found an old communication line of Marduk and reached out to a group that we are calling the Nazi Hydra Party. You see, Project Paperclip wasn't just about bringing scientists to the United States. Yeah, I guess that was part of it. And, we see a lot of the eugenics programs throughout the world. You've been familiar with some big ones that have happened in the last few years, which affected all of us. And a lot of epigenetics programs, meaning, sending frequencies through computers, all kinds of through your phones. These things have been going on in cooperation with the CIA, DARPA, and other American intelligence agencies for quite some time now. And this particular group, though, is somewhat different. It turns out that the best scientists that are humans, actual humans, were taken someplace else. And the two places on Earth where these groups of scientists would have a connection still to Earth, one of them was in Brunei in Bedawan Mountain, and the other one is in Nowhere, Wyoming. You could say it was somewhat near the Jasper Mines. It's a place you can look up on the internet. And these two locations were not the place where these scientists were located. However, they were portals to transport things that they created. These scientists throughout history were what I guess they would consider the best of the best, and therefore they were sent over to the Netherworld. And there was almost, kind of like when you go scuba diving, you would need an air tank, or if you were snorkeling, you would use a tube that kind of brought, the air up to the surface in an environment in which you could still breathe underwater. Well, in the Netherworld, these humans would not have survived. So the lifeline, so to speak, was connected to these two locations. In the Netherworld, these humans existed in what you would call a Faraday cage, a bubble, in a biosphere. They had been completely separated from humanity as a whole in the happenings here on Earth. They were genetically modified, and they genetically modified themselves because they were given some more advanced technologies to whereby they could use over 50%, in some cases up to 60%, maybe 62, 63% of their brain, which made them more logical than emotional. Some of those modifications also included things that you could say made them environmental sociopaths. They had little to no emotions, compassion, feelings anymore. Some of them were also given life extension technologies. I know that one that I ran across was, a regular human. I would say he was probably 350 years old. These technologies do exist. They have existed to some degree within the deep state, but predominantly in ranks that of humans that are no longer here. The ones that are still here are more subject to everything that's going on, even though they might have antidotes and whatnot for some of the eugenics and epigenetics programs that go on here on the planet. Definitely not the lower end operatives, even the secret space program kind of folks. And, there have been members that would consider themselves high ranking, like Langley 5, that have caught COVID and, things like that. So they don't really give them, those types of technologies, although they would probably give them a warning to when they were going to send something to Earth, disease or, as some kind of a virus or something here. They would definitely probably have more notification than the rest of us did, that's for sure. The Hydra group has been kind of doing their own thing over there for quite a while. And if they created anything, it would have been for the Black Magician. It would have been for Allie's AI. It would have been for, their purposes, not for the deep state's purposes. Although the deep state is egotistical and arrogant enough to think that everything is theirs and the world is their oyster and everyone everywhere works for them. If they found out anything in the last week, hopefully they figured out that that's not true. But that certainly hasn't stopped them from still continuing to try to bring all of these beings here so that they can get some help. It's kind of ridiculous, really. So with these Hydra group people, they were found because the secret space program contacted them on an old Marduk line and told them it's time. Time for what? I don't know. The only thing I do know is there were many semi-humans in stasis over there that they somehow used a technology. Now, I'm going to explain to you the best way I can because they're all no longer here and I couldn't wait long enough to try to figure out what fire them up meant or get them up and running meant. Because if I did, then we might have had more problems here. So what we actually saw them when we found the group, we kind of observed them for a little while, and they had the humans in stasis, and they would insert some kind of a lens, which looked like some kind of a flexible motherboard of sorts, small enough to fit over a human eye. And somehow this gave them a connection to Allie's AI or a different AI, which would allow them to create things in their mind, somehow communicate it through a connection here to Earth, and then therefore create it here on Earth. So it was almost like a synthetic manifestation kind of technology, if I had to say, because I was watching what they were doing in a theta mode. So it's that point of a regular human where you are not quite awake and not quite asleep, and you start to get, that's where a lot of your intuition kicks in and that kind of thing. It's the reason why people meditate, because their goal is to be in that theta mode so that they can connect with source or their higher self, so to speak. And these beings were doing that 24/7, but they couldn't connect to Earth because that wasn't permitted, because they might actually start to feel some kind of empathy for humanity or compassion, because it's really hard to kick the compassion and the empathy out of a human being. And if it's done with eugenics or epigenetics to completely kick out the compassion. You do have our rare occasions where you have your serial killers and things like that, but even a lot of them It's an epigenetic situation where it's an environmental past, something in their childhood that creates a disconnect on an emotional level. It can also be a chemical disruption in the brain. But for the most part, even they have a certain amount of compassion, believe it or not. I know it doesn't seem that way, but they do. Even the deep state, a lot of them have husbands and wives, and they have children they actually care about. So there is some kind, maybe they don't have a whole lot of compassion for humanity, for the rest of us, because they see us as lesser beings. They're special bloodlines and we're not. So, but even they have compassion for something. It might be their own, but definitely not, for the rest of us. So I'm not saying that. Don't take that the wrong way. But this group was very different. They were located in the 5th density of the Netherworld, is where their little habitats were. And they didn't quite get an opportunity to use these things in their eyes and try to connect with an AI here on Earth or anything to try to further this cause. Despite this secret space program's best efforts, they were hoping to get some help, just like they were hoping to get some help from this Q race that they thought actually cared if they lived or died. Of course they didn't, and neither did these scientists, because, like I said, their increase in their percentage of their brains that they used in combination with some genetic modifications, and they were completely just crazy scientists. They weren't evil. I know that sounds weird. They were not, mass murderers or killers. They would be the kind of scientists that would create some kind of a assassination drug or things like ricin powder or, off natural organic things that would actually cause death. But they were just excited about their invention. They didn't really care what anybody did with it from there.
Oh my goodness, pretty scary, right? That there could be humans, quote unquote humans out there that don't care what happens. It's such a foreign concept to me, but apparently they exist. Well, they did. They're gone now. They don't exist anymore. So let's talk a little bit more about the structure of the Netherworld, because this is what Kim is working on right now. We have talked in the past about realm owners, for example, realm owners of planet Earth and how things were structured. Well, the Netherworld had their own realm owners, so to speak, people that were in control of certain parts of the Netherworld realms. And what's really interesting about this, you know how they have to tell us certain things in order to get our consent to be able to do this crap, right? So we're all familiar with the Matrix movies? Okay, well, I think we all kind of knew that Matrix was kind of connected to this. They kind of did some disclosure and we're kind of like, yeah, we live in a Matrix, we get it. So it kind of woke some people up a little bit. Well, they took it another step further. So when we talk about the realm owners, Ali's AI, so the AI system of the Netherworld, created these realm owners, and they actually used many of the names that we're already familiar with from the Matrix. I kid you not. I mean, there's a bunch of realm people. It's not even people. Artificial tech demons. Let's just call them. So there's a lot of them, but I wanted you guys to get a more complete picture of how intricate this whole system of the Netherworld was. They really did plan to take over all of God's creation, which is mind-blowing to me. So here's Kim talking more about the realm owners and what their jobs were.
This is kind of interesting. This is sort of where, they kind of tell you what they're doing in some cases, because some of these names of beings we've heard before, and some of them we have not, turned out to be primed and prepped and ready to be realm owners. Now, realms of the Netherworld are not the same as realms as we have heard about them in the past in the natural world or even in the hologram. Before, we had groups of lower astral beings and groups, what you call fallen angels, and groups of higher astral beings we call quote unquote angels. And they were guardians over various densities. Pretty simple. Well, as it relates to the Netherworld, it's not quite that simple. The Netherworld had more of beings that would control what they called worlds. And we would call these things a part of our reality that would be a part of your human, I guess you would say. And they actually created whole worlds between planes, as an example, or between densities, or even within aspects of creation that they would rule over. So, as an example, we had a being called Morpheus. You've probably heard that name before from a funny little Matrix movie. And the Morpheus that we know, coming from the Netherworld, his dominion, so to speak, was the dream world. So he was the ruler of dreams. So all those nightmares, if you've had some strange dreams and whatnot over the last couple of weeks, if not probably your whole life, you can blame this realm owner for that. Apparently in the multiverse, the Netherworld has an actual subworld we call a realm, but it's not a definitive line. Like, it's not defined by a density, somewhere between the 5th and 6th density, we could say in the past about other realm owners. Here, the dream world exists in all of them. So that was Morpheus. Now, each one of these realm owners, I want to be clear, are not actual beings. They're not organic. They are not even Netherworld created beings. They are 100% Alley's AI beings that are walking throughout the Netherworld. They are extensions and arms of Alley's. Much like, I guess, in the Matrix movie, I didn't see the last one, but someone had told me who had seen it that Morpheus turned out to be an AI the whole time. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I'm like, well, because he is. Another one that you've heard the name of, Oracle. And I'm not talking about that company, that's run by the CIA that makes financial softwares. No, we're talking about the Oracle, the seer. This one would actually prevent or create visions that are not real, especially for humans. This helped them to manifest things in creation because of our connection to source as celestials. It would create fictitious, intuitive situations if you were subject to that and you weren't realizing that it wasn't your own intuition or your connection to source. This is why I always caution people about channelers, and people think that they're talking to Pleiadians and other folks, and they might not be. So that was the job of the Oracle. The Oracle was your false sight, let's just say. We also even had a Neo. How's that for interesting? Neo had no intention of breaking any matrix, I can tell you that. It had to do with a network of energy. And because Neo was very much related to the energetic world of things and creating power sources for the Netherworld. We also had a Thoth, which was definitely a being that looked just like the Dark Overlord and the Destroyer. And he was more of one of the gatekeepers and the ruler of the underworld, overworld, inner worlds, and outer worlds. We also had a eugenics being. This guy would rule over the world of things like disease and mental disorders and lots of other things that we experience as humans. But his job was to predominantly exist within the mental and emotional world, creating disruption everywhere. And he was called Eugene for short. We have the Dark Prince. Dark Prince I've talked about quite a few years ago. The Dark Prince was kind of the head of the Order of the Black Sun. In the Netherworld and elsewhere, he was also known as the Architect, meaning the architect of the matrix that we lived in all matrices, and recreating matrix after matrix after matrix for more and more control. So was he the architect or the creator of the universe? No. But he did architect enough AI structures in order to affect creation. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to talking about our curse of the X, so to speak. We also had ALICE. Now, ALICE we know is an AI system, and it is an AI system, complete 100% AI system. And ALICE's rulership was over souls or lost souls. We would call her the soul world keeper because there was a whole world created for lost souls. Remember when you would go to church, if you ever did in your life, and they would talk to you about the fact you were going to end up in the pit, in the abyss with Satan? Well, yes, you could have been if ALICE got a hold of you, because there were a lot of lost souls in the abyss from many, many. We have definitely had an abyss world, for sure. It was what I guess I call ALICE's world. And ALICE's world, the abyss world, also existed in several different locations. The abyss's main function wasn't just a capturer of organic souls. The abyss world was where all creations of source would go to die. It would then, because remember, in the world of darkness, you must destroy in order to create. Because once something is out there in creation, the only thing that can uncreate it or demolecularize it is if it is returned back to the central part of the creator. Well, that's something that the Netherworld did not want to happen. The reason why is because it needed all of the creation it could get in order to further its cause and in order to, for lack of a better term, destroy it and morph it into something else. It's also the reason why we were such a target recently as well, but we'll get into that in a minute. So just understand that the abyss it wasn't a place where all things go to die. It was the place where all things are held captive or morphed into something non-natural, into something that beings that would be living in the Netherworld. It would be morphed into AIs or AI beings, or it could even be morphed into frequencies, or you could say a soul might end up in the dream world, so to speak, and then it would be a creator or help the AI known as Morpheus create dreams, positive and negative, that would move people to do things, and not just humans, other beings too, that would morph people into doing things they would not normally do or be afraid of, creating fear, all the lovely things that they like humans to do so that they can create or manifest negative things for the Netherworld. We know of Leviathan, also an AI. You could say Leviathan's job was to be the keeper of the etheric world, or the dark etheric world, so to speak, not allowing for the ether of creation to manifest itself into our world, not just Earth, but everywhere. Let's see, who else do we have? We had Satan. You're familiar with this one, not to be confused with Santa, or maybe, who knows. Satan was the keeper or the blocker of Source itself. That was also an AI system. We talked about that before. But its job was to make sure that no creation left Source without being destroyed and then sent to the Netherworld. And there was a whole structure for this in place we'll talk about in just a second. Okay, we had Titan. You're familiar with the Titan. We've also heard of Titan AI. Was going to be one of the AIs that was the big operation before Odin and Hercules and the Babylon system, if you've been around the currency revaluation world for a while. Titan was blocking wisdom. His job was to make sure you didn't get wisdom as a human, and other organic beings couldn't either. We had Mateus, which was blocking the causal world, kind of a gatekeeper, so to speak. Astrius was the god of the astral world. The Demiurge, we've talked about before, was the god of the physical world. Heracles was the god of the optimal world. Amadeus was the god of the supernal world. And we had the Knights of Time. You've heard of us talk about different, the Black Knight satellite, for example, was something that was leaking out in the alternative community for a while, where there were every color of night you could imagine, whose job was to control time and movement of the multiverse. We also have the Calen, whose job it was to control and block the 0 point of the multiverse, or the point at which the worlds collided. And we had Orpheus. You know Orpheus probably from our history as the music maker and the frequency maker, also known as music, who was blocking the seas. He created Alice created him to rule over the current of the multiverse, which so far only extended into the Netherworld. It didn't come into our world, maybe somewhat into the holographic universe, but not here. So these were the main characters. And then, of course, you have the Black Magician, at the helm of it all, and Alice. There were other ancillary AIs that Alice created. Divine Intervention was another one where it had the divine intervention of everything, tried to anyway. And I would say there was other ones. I'm trying to think of some of the other names. There was probably about 50 or 60 of them so we've discovered over the last week that were offshoots, some things that we would see as a positive thing, that would come from Source, but was not. It was actually coming from alleys in other parts of the universe. As far as here, it tried to implement all of these lovely programs here on Earth. Now, to some degree, there was and has been something that we brought with us from the hologram and from the holographic universe that was connected to each one of these beings. For lack of a better term, I call these things dark towers because they are a connection to the Netherworld that existed on Earth. There was a lot of covenants in place as to why there wasn't full infiltration here on Earth. And they would use these doorways of 1111, Lions Gates, 8s, 8s, 9 9s, 1 1s, and, to make that entry, as I had explained before. Did these dark towers cause us issues? Yes, to some degree, because as certain alignments would happen, or full moons or new moons sometimes, not all the time, and definitely during times of the 11/11, 12/12, 1/1, and so on and so forth throughout our year, there were frequency stone fields there that were activated to some degree. And that's why we've been hearing these tones like crazy, because they're trying to keep or open up those entry points, and the dumb deep state humans are trying to help them do it so that they could bring over those netherworld worlds, the supernal worlds, time worlds, current worlds, dream worlds over here to Earth.
So Kim is still in the process of making sure that doesn't happen. So we don't want these beings over here in our world. We don't want any of that. We don't want to have anything to do with Allie's AI. She says we are making a lot of progress, but to say that we're out of this wouldn't be accurate. The other thing that Kim talked about, I'm not going to include a soundbite from this, but just want to give you a heads up. So if you want to go back, she got out her whiteboard and she talked about how energy from source is dispersed. Okay. She says it naturally flows in a counterclockwise position where organic creation would get energy from source first. Okay. And then it would kind of go around to other places. But, and I wasn't completely sure if Allie's AI did this or just the nature of the Omegaverse and everything, but now it is flowing in a clockwise position, which means we are the last to get anything. I mean, we're still getting energy from source. I think we can all feel that. And it is increasing. But man, the amount that we're supposed to get from the amount that we're getting, I mean, it's like dispersed amongst everything else, and every other negative AI got their share so they could transmute it until it got to us. And now we need to get it going the opposite way. So if you want to learn a little bit more about how this works, you would definitely be helpful to see her on the whiteboard. So again, this is the GIA report from Friday. It's the only one she did this last week. And one of the things that she said at the end is even though we are still in the middle of this battle, we are on the side of source. And we know that source has already won. And she said, I love this quote. She said, if he brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. Insert whatever pronoun you want. Obviously, God's not a he, but our language is somewhat limited, right? But it's so true. I mean, how many times in your own life can you look back and realize, wow, it may not have been what I really wanted to have happen at the time, but when you look back, it's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what was needed. And so I know it can kind of be frustrating. A couple weeks ago, we didn't even know this Netherworld existed. And now it's like, holy cow, so much has happened. The best thing you can do right now is hold on to your light. Focus on source. Focus on the things that make you happy, that make you thankful. The emotions of love and thankfulness and gratitude, all of that. Those are the highest vibrations. Focus on that right now. That is the best thing that you can do. And I've said this before, I think we're actually doing a lot more than that, because when I say that, sometimes I'm like, I want to be in the fight. I want to get in there, and I want to take the, help whatever with these netherworld beings. We are celestial creatures, celestial beings, and we exist in many different places at the same time. Who's to say that your higher self or whatever is not doing all this kind of stuff and helping Kim, helping all of humanity? Because I think we are. I know it can get frustrating being on this, this third dimension and being like, oh yeah, ground, hold the light, great. Same thing that we've been doing forever, right? But that is so, so important. Just living your best life, right? And grounding and being with source is so important. And trust that you as a celestial are out there in multiple places helping with this situation. I just want to put that out there because that really does help me. Because again, it can just feel like, we're just, doing our day-to-day jobs and, I'm taking care of my kids and I'm making dinner and, all this stuff that seems quite boring compared to destroying the Netherworld. But I think you're contributing in more ways than one is what I'm trying to say. So good for you. You guys are awesome. All right. So that gives you a snapshot of the different stories we talked about this week. A little bit less information than normal because we didn't have the news on Wednesday. Again, we're not going to have the news this coming Wednesday either for New Year's. If you want more information about us, check out our website, unitednetwork.earth. And if you want to subscribe, that gives you instant access to all of the content we put out. So our news updates, New Earth interviews, global intelligence agency reports, all things restoration. The next time I talk to you guys, it will be 2025. So I guess I can say, see you next year. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.